excited that you are live with me today. If you're watching this on a replay, definitely leave a comment and tell me where you are tuning in from. I am live in Los Angeles, and I hope that you are having a fantastic Friday. This is the kickoff to Easter weekend. So also in the comments, let me know what you plan on doing for Easter. If you celebrate, if you don't celebrate, if you are a brunch person, if you are going to church, if you are doing an Easter egg roll, what are you doing for Easter? All right, let's get into some of the things that are kind of top of mind for today and heading out through the weekend. Obviously, with Donald Trump's America, he likes to leave little, I would say, trauma triggers for every single weekend. And that means that I'm sure we're going to hear something tonight, Friday night press dump, heading into the weekend. I'm so excited that there's a distraction from all of that being Easter. And I would assume that there would be less traumatic news during a holiday weekend like this. But I wouldn't put it past him. Anyways, well, so thank you for joining if you are just joining me, and let's talk about the energy out of the Democrats. Okay, now the reason that I say the energy out of the Democrats is because with every single move that is new and different, I'm talking about things like Cory Booker doing this sort of speech that went on and on 25 hours, right? I'm talking about Senator Van Hollen who went to El Salvador. I'm talking about AOC and Bernie Sanders doing this sort of fight oligarchy tour. These things are new and different and I would say effective. The other thing is David Hogg, who is trying to use some sort of kind of fundraising of $20 million to primary people who are not being effective in Congress, I believe, and in the Senate. So let me just put it this way, doing things that are new and different and disruptive in a good way. These are the things that are going to get attention and pull the vacuum that Donald Trump has kind of like sucked everybody into. They will disrupt that vacuum. And the media vacuum has basically capitulated to Donald Trump and his sort of, I would say, undoing of America, okay? So if we can do things that are disruptive, that are good trouble, that's where I think we're going to be able to do more stopping. Bonjour, Vivienne. How are you today? Thank you for joining. So let me just show you a little bit of what I'm talking about because what is it called? I went into my emails to show you exactly what I've been receiving from the Democratic Party. And so let's talk about this. Let me try to get above it here. So this one is saying, this was from Wednesday, as you can see, and it says 3 things we're doing right now. I'm going to try to get out of the way here. And it says, launch the People's Cabinet, an initiative. Hold on, let me move my jeans. So this is what I'm wearing today. I've laid it out. Launch the People's Cabinet, an initiative that brings together experts and community leaders. And let me get back in here because it goes on and on and on about what they are doing. Okay, this is a little bit better. Community leaders who will cut through the lies and speak directly to the American people about the destruction of the Trump administration. Okay, then it goes on to talking about setting up a new war room operation to combat the far right's lies and streamline the DNC's communication, research, and mobilization operations. Hosted people's town halls in districts where Republican representatives are hiding from constituents rather than showing up and doing their jobs. Okay, so this was an email that came, like I said, from the Democratic Party. So this is one of the things that I think is very, 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 very interesting for people to hear what they're doing before donating. Hey, Jimmy, I'm so glad that you wrote, we know how to read, but you know what? Sometimes people turn on my live streams and they put their phones down and they just listen to me talk. So I'm trying to be very accessible for people who actually may be blind or don't have the access that you might have and I might have. So that's why I'm doing that. All right, so 3 things that we're doing right now. That's the Democratic Party giving us the outline, which they weren't doing before. If you remember, a lot of people were saying, what are we doing? What are we doing? The Democrats aren't doing anything. And they're still asking for money, right? And people were saying, we're not giving them money until they actually tell us what they're doing with that money. This is a different kind of email that we're getting from the Democratic Party, basically outlining outlining, here's what we've done, here's what we're doing, here's what we're going to be doing in the future, and that's why we need your money to continue these sort of efforts to fight the Trump administration. Okay, so that was one. Here's another one from AOC. Okay, we are at a crossroads. This was also in this past week. Let me get out of the way. Sorry. It says, the movement is not about partisan labels or purity tests. It's about class solidarity. Okay, and she's going on and talking about the Fight Oligarchy tour, and she's basically giving you a reason to be out there with her. Okay, I've made a choice. We must fight the oligarchy that has created this nightmare, and that is why I have never taken money from lobbyists or corporations, and it's why I never will. So it's giving you another sort of idea of who she is, what she's fighting for, and how she's going to be doing it through these sort of rallies and things that she's doing with Bernie Sanders. I can say this is effective. She is positioning herself, whether it's to be in the Senate for some number of years or to be considered a cabinet member for whomever might end up in the White House after Donald Trump, or to run on a ticket herself. Leave a comment if you would vote for AOC for a vice presidential kind of nominee situation, or even for president. I'm curious to see if you would vote for her in this sort of capacity. All right, so then there was another one. I'm telling you, the energy in the email activism is on fire, okay? More so than it used to be. All right, then this one from the Democrats, the DNC isn't sitting back. We're about to ask you to donate. Like, they're being really upfront, straightforward from the get. We're about to ask you to donate directly to the DNC before our mid-month deadline. If you give us a moment of your time, we'll explain why your support is so important, okay? So they're being straight to the point, giving it to you, and I don't think they have been doing this before. This goes into the rest of the email. There has never been a more important time. We're suing Trump. So now they're getting into the crux. We need money because we are actually filing suit against Donald Trump and his administration. It keeps going on. We're suing Trump over his illegal voter suppression efforts and his attempted takeover of the FEC. And then they talk about the war room that they've already talked about, the People's Cabinet from the other email. That's on top of our ongoing work to organize everywhere, year-round, and every zip code, okay? Because they continue to organize, they continue to try to get the voter registration, all of that stuff. Joe says, never vote for someone whose sole opinion is to fight Trump. What about the people? Yes, here's the thing. I feel like what they're saying is they're meeting the moment. Okay, if they're not fighting the sort of executive orders that he is trying to implement, then they're not actually fighting in the moment. I don't think that the soul of the Democratic Party is to fight Donald Trump. I actually feel like there are a lot of people who are very sensible, who have been wanting to reach across the aisle, but the other side of the aisle is so far to the right that there is no work and compromise happening, which is why you see a lot of the entire votes going very much all the Democrats and Bernie Sanders voting with each other, and them only passing things with the entirety of the GOP by like 2 votes in most of these congressional legislative efforts. Hey, Matt, thanks for joining. I really appreciate you commenting. Every comment helps people spread the word that this live is happening, so I appreciate you being here. This next one from the Democrats, we're taking Trump and DOGE to court. This was one that was specifically talking about not the voter suppression, but taking Trump to court over DOGE, okay? Now, this is a little bit different because it's more about the access that Trump has given to Elon Musk and DOGE specifically, which I don't know if you've ever seen that woman that they said was in charge of DOGE. I thought her name was like Kathy Gleason or Miss Gleason. I don't remember her first name. But remember when they came out and they said that she was in charge of DOGE? But we never, ever saw or heard from her, like at a podium speaking about the efforts of DOGE, I still think that's very curious that we never saw her. Like when they announced that she was in charge, she was like in Mexico on vacation or something. And then that was it. Nobody ever brought her up again, not at a press briefing, not anywhere, because we all kind of knew it was a farce. Like we knew that this was just someone that they threw out there because they had a court filing. And this, I believe, is that sort of court filing that they are suing about the access that has been granted to DOGE in kind of an unprecedented way. The other part that just came out, and this is not in this email, but there was a sort of whistleblower who was on, I believe, the DOGE team or Elon's team, who was on, I believe, Rachel Maddow's show the other day. My mom was telling me about this, that he was basically saying that when they got into a specific system, that they changed passwords, they changed logins, and within minutes, there were people who had accessed the system with the correct username and the correct passwords with an IP address in Russia. Now, that in and of itself, we have not seen in an email yet, but I know it's coming. All right, moving on. In this email, they talk about Trump imposing his radical changes on how Americans can register to vote, cast a ballot, and participate in democracy, disenfranchisement of a lot of people. Specifically, I think they're talking about, the executive order, but they're really also hinting at Congress here with the SAVE Act and what just happened with them passing that. It's going to go to the Senate, whether or not they vote for it. But basically, having to prove citizenship within or at the polling place, which means presenting a birth certificate that matches all the documentation has to match up. If you haven't gotten a real ID yet, make sure you're getting the right one, because apparently in some states, the real ID does not require the little thing that says like birth certificate has been verified. And so some real IDs in some states do not require this sort of like checking of the box. So some real IDs are not like the others. But basically it's a poll tax. Making sure that you get a real ID is a poll tax, versus, going and getting a passport. That's a poll tax. If they're going to require this, just call it what it is, right? Then we get to this other one, which was from yesterday. This is from the Democratic, I can't read the top of it, .org, right? Feel the change, Sandra, right? Do we feel the change? The tide is turning. There's a sweeping wave of momentum behind the Democratic Party, and we cannot let this moment slip by. They're talking about Elon Musk's trying to sway the the election process of the Supreme Court judge in Wisconsin, and how he was defeated in his effort. I don't think that he is going to be prosecuted for that sort of lottery thing that they did, but that remains to be seen. So they're really talking about feeling the change about what they've been trying to do. And I haven't seen this many, this flurry of emails come through in a long time, and especially from the Democrats. I've seen a few, there was one from Barack Obama a while back. I actually saw one from Kamala Harris not too long ago. I think it was maybe 2 days ago. And that, that in addition to the appearance of Joe Biden the other day, when he had an actual speech going on and really kind of thumping the table here of what has happened since he's left. I think that the energy, whether it's the oligarchy tour, the email activism, and the call for donations, by showing what they're doing versus saying what they want to do with the money, okay? Vivian says, Easter eggs? I need to go back to that email for Kamala, and I will get back to you and let you know if there are any Easter eggs. Definitely, if you haven't already, give this a like if you are so inclined, because, sorry, my table just moved, because it will help my channel grow and help spread all of this information to people who may not have actually seen all of these emails come through their inboxes, or may not even be signed up to see what the Democrats are doing. Whether you are on the right or the left, this might be interesting to you to see what kind of messaging the Democratic Party is sending out. All right, moving forward, there are a few things that I think are very interesting in the context of global initiatives right now. And I say that because Harvard is at the center of what is happening right now with Donald Trump and his administration, because they basically said, we're not capitulating. And he came back with, well, we're going to try to take away your tax exempt status. And then he's like, oh, well, and if you don't hand over the sort of academic records or any sort of other records of these international students, we're going to take away your ability to have international students at your university. So that's where that is kind of at a standstill, but I really feel like he's poking the bear. In this particular instance, Harvard has the best lawyers, and I really do think that they kind of went like, bring it. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying. Let's see. Tashi says, why are we protesting for non-American citizens? That's a really good question. I think that a lot of people who are not American citizens, it actually hits very close to home for me. My husband has a green card. He is a French citizen. He has a French passport, but he lives here in the United States with me and our 2 children. So this is a really big deal for people who, like me, it's like right in our front doorstep, right? Now, is he out there, looking like some of the non-citizens, the undocumented that are being picked up right now? No. And that is where another part of the equation comes in. People are being rounded up not because they are undocumented, but because they are profiling people who look to them like they could be undocumented. My husband is documented because he came here, through the legal process and did all of the paperwork that you would need to do to come here and be a green card holder. A lot of people have tried to do that process as well, but they are not as far along in that process as some other people. So why do we fight or protest for non-Americans? And it's kind of interesting that you're saying non-American citizens, because it kind of is, I would say undocumented people. There are people who are American citizens through legal status, right? Through green card processing, through visa processing and things like that, where they get their sort of status to be here legally, whatever that means for them. And I think that it's more about, making sure that everybody has a voice. Tashi says, I appreciate the feedback, but my thought was more focused on those who aren't currently living in the U.S., students preparing to come to the U.S. for school, incoming new citizens, incoming green card holders. Of course. Okay. So this is actually something else that kind of hits home for me too, because a lot of people think this is my job. I teach English online. That is what I do for my job. So what I do every single day is I'm talking with students who live in foreign countries, who are trying to better themselves by learning English, becoming fluent in English, becoming more like native speakers, and they want help from someone like me who is a native speaker from the United States, not a native speaker from Ireland or from the UK or from Australia or New Zealand or somewhere like that. They want the experiences and the knowledge and the sort of phrasing of an American. And some of those students are taking tests to get into US schools. And so I have this sort of obligation to teach the best of my ability, right? To the best of my ability. But I also think that if people are coming from other countries to go to US-based schools, they are contributing a lot of their experiences to Americans. And one of the things that I think a lot of people forget is that a lot of Americans don't travel. They don't have a passport and they never leave the United States for their entire lives, okay? And why should they have to? They don't have to. America, like the United States, is vast. It is broad. We have a lot going on. There's different climates and different scenery and different like mountains and lakes and oceans and beaches. We have it all, right? And there are a lot of people who would love to travel and love to do that. And if they don't have that ability, students coming from other countries coming to the United States and imparting their experiences is sort of the other way of cultural exchange. So if you can't go to that place, but they are coming to you, that's another way that I think cultural exchange happens, right? We learn about them while they are here, whomever they are, whether they're from Italy or like, France or even the UK. We are learning not just through media and like television shows or or like films, but through actual conversation. I think that kind of culture exchange is valuable. It's something that we don't think about a lot, and that's the reason that I think it's important. um, I think it was like 600 or so international students' visas were revoked recently by Marco Rubio, Homeland Security, Department of State, all of this. And I think that's a very sad thing because the revocations didn't come down where each individual had been sort of notified, right? My question about how they're doing this process is really about why they're revoking the visa. Was it because of an infraction? Was it because of protesting like they were trying to do with the student in Columbia? Or was it just because they're an international student and they are just being mean and cruel? So we don't know every single instance for the 600. And I think it's really relevant to find that out because I've been seeing some stories on news media talking about, this one student had some parking tickets. Like, and I was like, oh, really? It's about parking tickets at this point? Because before it was about speech, when we were talking about the university student at Columbia who had organized protests, who had organized students in a sort of pro-Palestine fashion. And to me, that's not what they're doing with these other 600 students. That they're not talking about the same sort of what they're calling bad actor actions, which I don't think that they were. I think that everybody who is here is able to speak freely, but that will go to the courts soon enough. If you haven't had a chance already, please take a moment to like my live so that it gets shared out to other people and they are able to participate, whether or not it is in the comments right now live or on the replay. So that's another thing. Google is one of the other things I wanted to talk about today too. I didn't get a chance to say this yesterday, but they are in big trouble as far as their monopoly with ads online. And I thought that was very interesting because, they're trying to do kind of this sort of breakup, shakeup with the tech industry. Meta and Mark Zuckerberg was on a panel, not a panel, he was testifying, I believe, about a whistleblower who was saying some things about Facebook and their sort of back room conversations. And now we're talking about Google. We also, not too long ago, I believe the federal government had sued Apple regarding its sort of monopoly in the app store and prioritizing its own apps over different apps. There's a lot that has been going on between the DOJ and tech industry folks, which I thought was very interesting because they all lined up behind Donald Trump at the inauguration, and yet they're still targeting them post inauguration. So I don't know how that makes them feel, but I really feel like it is coming to a head. Tashi, it's still thank you of course, for sharing. Yes, Juan Lara says, also, do you think Bernie AOC is the next ticket for the Democrats? That would be great to watch. Okay, I believe, and I'm going to choose this carefully, I believe Bernie Sanders will not be on the ticket. I believe that he will not run for president, but I think he will campaign with AOC or someone to make sure that his following goes in the direction he wants it to go. I think it might be either a Gavin Newsom, a Cory Booker, a Pete Buttigieg, and AOC. I think AOC will be, or even a Jasmine Crockett, I think AOC will be a vice presidential nominee for one of those men. I don't think that there will be a woman at the top of the ticket. Kamala is I think her motivation for running is past, but don't count her out. Don't count her out. Oh, Lena, you have man hands. Thank you. Do you like them? Do you like them? I like my hands. I actually don't think I have man hands, but you know what? Man hands on me are beautiful. So thank you for the compliment. One more. I'm rooting for AOC. Please not Gavin. Okay, let me just tell you something. The idea of Gavin Newsom scares a lot of people right now. I live in California, so there are a lot of people who would say, yeah, he's done a lot of good things for California. And there are a lot of people who would say, no, he has not done California very well. What I have thought is that he has stood up to Donald Trump pretty well. So in that case, I would say he's a solid candidate. In another way, he has created a podcast where some of his early guests have been right-wing conservative people like Charlie Kirk, and that has not fared well for him. He has also come out against, I believe, transgender athletes, and that has swayed a lot of people's opinions against Gavin Newsom. So I believe that he is in the process of going a little bit leaning to the right, and then he's going to make his broader left pivot. This is what a lot of candidates do when they want to get the support of GOP or even MAGA at this point. He is leaning in a little bit as far as he can dip his toes, and then he's going to course correct for the broader independent vote and for the Democrats. That's what I see happening with Gavin Newsom. I don't think he will actually get the Democratic nominee or nomination, but I do think he will get a lot of votes, and those votes will have to go somewhere, and that will probably go to someone like Cory Booker with like an AOC running mate. I'm rooting for AOC. Okay, I don't know. Something tells me that Newsom AOC. Really? Oh, I don't know, Solomon. I'm curious. I'm really curious how it's going to play out. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of action at that the sort of convention. I think that convention is going to be a lot of party. I think it's going to be a lot of spit fire. I think it's going to be really good. And it's going to show, like it did last time, the stark differences between the GOP and the Democratic National Conventions, that two separate kind of processes and energy. And I do think that energy is going to be on fire for the next presidential election. I hope that the energy is boiling over for the midterms so that a lot of this, what's happening, can get stopped in its tracks. Evan says, all those candidates are only going to make it worse for y'all. Maybe. I'm glad that you are, saying your opinion, because a lot of times we're all in our echo chambers and we are all thinking one thing. And sometimes that's not a good thing. That's why I was pointing out, what's his name? David Hogg, who wants to primary some of the people who are in some of these districts, but they are not. I think we are vacuuming in the other room. Some of the districts that they're just not being effective. And it's a tactic that I think a lot of people have not actually thought about. So I'm glad that you bring up that point, because it is good to hear differing opinions, especially when you're trying to reorganize a party that clearly is not, it's not in order. Our house is not in order, and we are slowly but surely getting that house in order. This has been a longer one today, so I appreciate everyone if you have stuck around or even been in my comment section. I love it when you comment, even if it's something that you think is going to offend me. I really appreciate you saying your opinion, because that is one of the things that people are fighting for every single day right now, is the right for us to speak our minds. So make sure that if you are trying to have hate speech in the comments, it's going to get blocked by YouTube. So I will probably never see that. But if you have a differing opinion, put it in the comments, because there are people who have the same opinion as you. And I don't want my opinion to be the only one reflected in these sort of live stream chats with you guys. I do think it's important for everybody's opinion to be heard. I'm obviously the one who has the vocal portion of this, but you have power in numbers to speak up and put your opinions in the comments, especially on all of my videos. So I love seeing you guys in the comments. If this was great, seeing me and chatting with me right now, hit the like button. If you haven't already subscribed, definitely subscribe when you can. I also do a Substack live stream every evening, Monday through Friday. So meet me over there tonight, and I will kind of try to run down a wrap up of the day of what's been happening. Solomon, thank you so much for subscribing. Vivian, you have a great day and a great weekend too. And stream, oh, the smoke shop is promoting themselves in the comments. Hey, I am not mad at you. So make sure that you are safe out there, and I will see you guys on the next one. Take care.